I grew up in a small 2-bedroom, 1-bath ranch house in northwestern New Jersey in a lake community. It had 2 small lakes. We only needed a small house because I'm an only child. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath was fine with us. And it's significant to note, too, that the house had 2 garages. My father was a car guy. So we had as many garages as bedrooms. In fact, there was more floor space for the cars for repair than there were for the humans for sleeping. It was heated with an oil-fired forced hot air system, which meant that when I was out in the snow during the wintertime, I could come in and stick my hands over the registers because they would be blowing hot air, or I could put my mittens over the registers. I just thought it was a really nice way to heat the house. The warmest spot in the house, temperature-wise, had nothing to do with the heating system, though. It was around the big fireplace that took up one wall of the very, very large living room in the house I grew up in. We used that fireplace all the time. As soon as the temperature dropped just a little bit, my father would have a fire going. So we had a fire in that fireplace almost all the time. And that's where it was warmest. And we would often gather like really close to the fire and keep warm. And it just seemed to be a very comfortable, hospitable place in that house. The emotional warm spot for me, strangely enough, turns out to be the coldest spot in the house, the garages, which were not heated and had a cement floor. Because that's where my father and I would work on cars together. And that's where I really got to know my dad. In fact, I really got to know him well one winter when I scored the bearings on my Fiat 124 Sport Spider. And it left me by the side of the road at 1 a.m. in Middletown, New York, if anybody knows where that is, on my way to Franklin, New Jersey. So my dad came out and he got me, brought the car back, put it in one of the bays in our garage, and we spent that winter tearing the engine apart. Every single piece came apart, and Dad taught me about engine repair that way, but more than that, he made sure that we spent a lot of time talking about ourselves, about life, about everything. Mm-hmm. So, and I remember other times in that garage too, working on things with my dad. So that's the emotional warm spot for me, those garages. And where, when, and how did God become warm to me? I grew up in a family that went to church. My earliest memory is of being in worship. That was something I did, though, because my parents did it, because it was required of me. If you were a Westhoff, you went to church on Sunday mornings. There was no question. There was no argument. So until I was about 13, 14 years old, I just did it because that's what my parents did. And I thought, I guess I'm a Christian because I go to church every Sunday, and, my family says we're Christians. So I guess that settles it. But one night, I could not get to sleep. I was like about 13 or 14. And I just had this sense that God was trying to get something across to me. I didn't hear any voices or anything like that. But I just sensed that God was saying something to me like, okay, do you believe it yourself? Are you going to follow Jesus because you want to follow Jesus? So I woke my parents up. It was like 2 a.m. And when they heard what it was about, they were delighted. They said, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. God is asking you if you're going to follow Jesus, if you are. And I spent a lot of that night reading my Bible, reading John, some of the passages that have to do with believing, and decided by morning that, yes, I wanted to make this my own. And we were attending a church where adult baptism was practiced, so I was baptized shortly thereafter. And that's when, where, how God became warm to me. Before that, it was just, I enjoyed church and enjoyed the church people and all of that, but it was just something I did because my family did it. But God became warm to me that night, and that's my story.